Bhagavati Naistiki.
Bhakti Naistiki.
Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, Chapter 8. Manifestation of Brahma from Bhagavatshayi Vishnu. And we're on text number 3. We do each word to start off with. Ashinam,
Ashinam,
Urdyam, Bhagavatam, Ajam, Sankarshanam, Devam, Akunta, Stavam, Vivitsava, Tatvam, Hatha, Parashya, Kumara, Mukya, Munayo, Invaprishchan, Asinam Ujjam Bhagavatam Ajam, Sankashanam Devam Akuntastavam, Viditsavastatvam Ataparashya, Tatta Parashya, Kumara Mukya Munayon Vaprishchan, Mukya Munayon Vaprishchan. Don't worry about it, I'm going to just move on to the word for word. Okay, please repeat. Asinam, seated. Ujjam, in the bottom of the universe. Bhagavatam, unto the Lord. Ajam, the original. Sankarshanam, Devam, the personality of Godhead. Akuntastatvam, Akuntasatvam, undetected knowledge. Vivitsavaha, being inquisitive to know. Tatvam, Ataha, truth like this. Parashya, regarding the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Kumara, the boy saint. Mukyaha, headed by. Munayaha, great sages. Anvaprishchan, inquired like this. Okay, translation, please repeat. Some time ago, being inquisitive to know, Sanat Kumar, the chief of the boy saints, accompanied by other great sages, inquired exactly like you about the truths regarding Vasudeva, the Supreme. From Lord Sankashan, who is seated at the bottom of the universe. Some time ago, being inquisitive to know, Sanat Kumar, the chief of the boy saints, accompanied by other great sages, inquired exactly like you about the truths regarding Vasudeva, the Supreme, from Lord Sankashan, who is seated at the bottom of the universe. Srila Prabhupada's Divine Purport. This is in clarification of the statement that the Lord spoke directly on the Srimad Bhagavatam. And I believe that was in yesterday's verse. Yes, and in the verse it stated, Soham Rinam. Let me now begin speaking on the Bhagavat Purana, which was directly spoken. That's Maitreya speaking. Let me now begin speaking on the Bhagavat Purana, which was directly spoken to the great sages by the personality of Godhead. So, in this Prabhupada, this particular verse we read a few moments ago, some time ago, being inquisitive to know, Sanatama, they heard from Lord Sankashan. Prabhupada says this is in clarification of the statement that the Lord spoke directly on the Srimad Bhagavatam. When and unto whom the Bhagavatam was spoken is explained herewith. Questions similar to those put forward by Vidura were asked by great sages like Sanat Kumar and Lord Sankashan, the plenary expansion of the Supreme Lord Vasudeva. He answered them. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. I'm going to do text 5 also. Text 4 doesn't have a purport. And that's a pretty good, there's a nice paragraph purport for verse number 5. So text 4 reads, Shwameva Dishyam Bahumanayantam.
Shwameva Dishyam Bahumanayantam.
Yad Vasudeva Binam Amananti. Prayagritaksham Buja Koshamisan. Unilayantam Bibudodayaya. Swameva Desham Bahumanayantam. Yad Vasudeva Pidam Amananti. Prayagristaksham Bujakosamisha. Unmilayantam Bibu Dorayaya. One more time. Swameva Dishyam Bahumanayantam. Yad Vasudeva Bidam Amananti. Prayagritaksham Bujakosamishan. Nilayantam Bibodorayaya. Swameva Dishyam Bahumanayantam. Vasudeva Bidam Amananti. Prayagritaksham Bujakosamisha. Unmilayantam Bibudorayaya. Swameva Dishyam Bahumanayantam. Yad Vasudeva Vidam Amananti. Pradyagitaksam Bujakoshamisha Unvilayantam Vibhuddhodaya. Mantra. Swameva Dishyam Bahumanayantam Yad Vasudeva Vidam Amananti. Pradyagitaksam Bujakoshamisha Unvilayantam Vibhuddhodaya. Okay. Swam, himself. Eva, thus. Dishyam, situated. Bahu, greatly. Manayantam, esteem. Yat, that which. Vasudeva, Lord Vasudeva. Abhidam, by the name. Amananti, acknowledge. Pratyadrita aksha, eyes settled for introspection. Hambuja, kosam, lotus-like eye. Ishat, slightly. Unmiliyantam, open. Bibuddha, of the greatly learned sages. Hudayaya, for the sake of advancement. Translation. At that time, Lord Sankarshan was meditating upon his Supreme Lord, who the learned esteem is Lord Vasudeva. But for the sake of the advancement of the great learned sages, he slightly opened his lotus-like eyes and begun to speak. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Okay, I'll say a little something. I may read the next verse. Om Gyanati Mirandasya Gyananjana Shilakaya Katsun Militanyena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Kam Guroti Vachalam Pungam Langayate Ganem Yakri Patamam Vande Shri Gurum Dinataranam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Iswaram Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nivasesha Shunyavadi Paschachari Satarine. So here we learn that sometimes Lord Sankarshan, maybe there's a distinction though, because Lord Anantasesh is always espousing, chanting, singing the glories of the Lord with his thousands of hoods and mouths. And he never exceeds, never comes to the end. He's somehow always freshly chanting. So here the Bhagavatam is going to be spoken at the bottom of the universe by Lord Sankarshan himself. And we know it's also spoken in the higher realms, and of course it was spoken by Sukadeva Goswami approximately 5,000 years ago here on earth. So it's the story of the personality of Godhead, so it's unending. It's not like these fictional stories that have a beginning, with a plot, and it's got a middle with adventure, and then it's got a happy ending. No, it's an unending story with innumerable pastimes. Krishna is that great and wonderful, and he's constantly traveling around each universe, performing these pastimes. And so how can they come to an end? It's not like it's a rerun. It's not like it's a rerun. Same character, same characters, and it's just the same thing. Nothing different. Same. It's just a movie and it's a rerun of the movie. So nothing's different. No, but in Krishna's Leela, every day it's different. It may be similar because Krishna's waking up and Mother Yasoda's dressing him and some of the boys are there helping. And then, he would assume take some kind of breakfast, maybe not, but they definitely got his packed lunch, and they all run out the house. And they get the calves and they head on out to whether they're pasturing them. And, and all the gopis, they're trying to get a glimpse of Krishna, seeing him do this, and they're fretting because, they've been experiencing Madhurya Rasa with him all night long, and here they are, they're up, and, they have, their duties, just like, Krishna's young boy has his duties, they have their duties, everybody, has their duties, which in their cases, in the spiritual realm, is all under the direction and influence of Yoga Maya. So even when he comes to earth and brings them, they're still under the influence of Yoga Maya because they're all absorbed in Krishna Leela. But in this world, when we're all doing our duties, the control is going on by the Mahamaya and the three modes of material nature, some combination of them. So in the Bhagavad Gita, we can learn how to elevate ourselves to a stronger mode. Not that one mode can do everything. If we had Brahmanas just teaching, then what are they teaching other than Sanatana Dharma? People can listen, but generally speaking, the common man, they have to go off and do their work. It makes the world go around. So, they're preparing for their next life. But in the course of preparing for their next life, after hearing Sanatana Dharma, they go off and they perform their work. In the Vedic culture, it's very nice work. And, they're tending the cows, they're tending the fields, they're bringing home the fruits of their activity, they're being cooked up and offered to Krishna. And, and they have their simple houses. They're not dependent on having to pay a big electric bill or a big gas bill. They just burn the cow dung and burn some wood, and they cook. They've been doing this forever. So it's not like they're unfamiliar with it and make a lot of mistakes and cause the fire. They become all full of soot and black and smoke and stuff like that. So, everybody's doing their duties. But even in Krishna Leela, it's not that the gopis can just run off. Maybe they do sneak behind a little bit, but they have to come back and do their duties. But, because that's the Leela. And in this particular duty, they're going to experience more pleasure than what they will experience at night. And it's like that every night, where their pleasure is constantly increasing in Krishna consciousness and their love for Krishna. But during the day it gets even greater because they're experiencing this vipralamba that Lord Chaitanya taught us about, this love and separation, this feeling in separation. Or when will Krishna return? But they're always remembering Krishna, and it takes the form of Ram and poetry and song, and they're all singing about it, and they're all in their different houses, and there may be certainly more than one in one house, and so it's a constant chorus going on of loving Krishna Lila to the extent that, as it says in the Brahma Samhita, that all talking takes the form of song or singing, and all walking takes the form of dancing. They're enjoying so much that they're always in a happy mood. There's no unhappiness. They're always happy. Whereas in this world, people have a hard time being happy, and there's so much unfortunate circumstances. The depression is so spread all over the world so much that they're trying to control it with antidepressants or exercise, some way to get people moving so they can break through the clouds of darkness and experience some joy, but they don't ultimately know what is that joy. They think that joy is achieving something or being responsible about something and making others happy by giving them the fruits of our work. But that joy is really what humanity doesn't know is what Prabhupada was giving. The real joy of the living entity is their Krishna consciousness, their loving relationship with Krishna. Because when we live in that, then there is no worry, there is no depression. Like Prabhupada would say, do you ever see Krishna on a machine with a cigarette in his hand? Like, in this world, we get trained up to do different jobs. If we're the engineer, we may be giving the plan and the specs, but then there has to be a guy on a bulldozer, or on a track hoe, on this type of machine, that type of machine. And then they get some peace of mind, satisfaction of mind. They're smoking some cigarettes, and when they get off of work, they go to the store and they buy some beer, just to find some happiness. But this is a Surik Baba. This is what the demons do. They enjoy that type of pleasure. But even the devas, they're taking some sort of amrita or some sort of nectar that's better for their health, so to speak. But the devotees, they're just enjoying in Krishna consciousness. It's not that they're not taking anything. The mothers, Mother Yasoda and clan, all of Krishna's aunts and uncles, all the Brajbasis, they have packed Krishna a nice lunch. But what is it made of? It's made of the nectar from their cows. And they've added some type of sweetener, they've added some rice, they've added some grain, and they've made different preparations for the boys to take to the fields. And Mother Yasoda even brings over Radharani to cook Krishna's dinner. Because she's such an expert cook, she wants Krishna to have the best, so she brings Radharani to cook. And so, they're in one sense, they're experiencing the same thing. But in reality, we're experiencing the same thing, but in a perverted way. We're experiencing it mixed with the three modes of material nature, which Prabhupada compares to experiencing sweet rice mixed with sand. So the happiness in this world is happiness in the three modes of material nature. It's there for some time and then it goes away. You have to constantly be working for it. And not only that, but you have to leave and take your birth again. Or maybe, either that or you work your way up to become some sort of sage and then, leave in Krishna consciousness and join the eternal Leela, where there is no depletion of happiness, where there's no happiness mixed with the modes of material nature. It's all pure joy. So that's the secret Prabhupada was teaching. That, hey, we're looking for our happiness in the wrong place. It's in Krishna consciousness. We have to develop our love for Krishna. And how can we do that if we don't hear about Krishna? So here we see that from the beginning of the Bhagavatam, the sages are hearing. And now we're finding that the Kumars, the original persons in the universe. They're hearing. They're hearing to the extent, because they were self-realized souls when they appeared, that Lord Brahma could not even engage them in Varnashram Dharma, which is how the world goes around in Krishna consciousness for, us conditioned souls. But immediately they were already fixed in Daiva Varnashram, and their Daiva was that they were self-realized sages. So they spend their days in meditation and hearing and chanting and espousing the Vedas and teaching people Krishna consciousness. They appear in several places in our 12 cantos of the Bhagavatam, teaching. I believe one time they taught the Pandavas, I can't remember what Kshatriyas, they taught different Kshatriyas, because it's very important that the Kshatriyas learn from the most learned, because they manage the government of the world. Just like yesterday, I had to go get the site plan approved. So I went before the government of Hancock County, and there were people who went there before me. And to just build a business. This guy was trying to build a business of taking parts out of cars and redoing them and selling them. But he was situated between two zones in one piece of property. So the rule, the ordinance that's already there, that the Board of Supervisors have to judge according. And they have their lawyer there first to study everything. So the lawyer is studying it, and he says the rule is that since your property's in two different zones, the zone that has the most road frontage, that's going to dictate whether you can build this or not, because according to the ordinance of C2, it's not allowed. But if J1 has more road frontage, then there may be a special exception. So, so there's a government, and, the government rules. So the Kshatriya rules. So if the Kshatriya is not Krishna conscious, then the rule is going to be on Krishna conscious. So therefore, people like the Kumaras, they speak to the most prominent leaders in society who are managing, running, governing the whole society. But here we see that they heard the Bhagavatam from Lord Sankashan himself. Now, Anantadev, Lord Sankashan's expansion of Baladev. So, Baladev is Krishna's first expansion. So, Bala means strength. Sankashan is holding the universe together. And Lord Ananta is supporting everything. And he's constantly chanting the glories of the Lord. It is said in the Chaitanya Bhagavat that we have to pay our obeisances to Lord Ananta Sage and Lord Balaram first. If we're ever going to espouse Krishna consciousness potently, purely, we have to have their blessings. They're the original spiritual master. But it's very important that we take their shelter to become learned and to become, Krishna conscious. And here, the Kumaras themselves, so great that their father could not engage them in ordinary varnashram, which means, you had to become a grahasta, you had to have children, you have to train them in Krishna consciousness, because you're going to leave and they have to take over and help the others, continue to help the other conditioned souls become Krishna conscious. So Lord Brahma, that was his duty, that was his responsibility. That's what he meditated upon the lotus stem for 1,000 celestial years, and then Krishna engaged him in building the universe. He's the original engineer of the entire universe. So Lord Brahma, in order to do this, these Kumaras appear from him. And then he tries to, do what his duty is, to engage them in helping him to build the universe. And they, I would assume in a very nice way, they explain to him that they don't have time for this because they have to be, meditating upon Lord Vishnu. They have to be practicing Krishna consciousness. And Brahma has been doing that for 1,000 years before he realized Lord Krishna. And now he's trying to do what Lord Krishna wants him to do. But the Kumaras, they didn't do it. they went off. They had the power to do it because they could remain celibate. It's not that they said, no, I'm not doing it, and then they went off and found a soulmate and began to enjoy some sort of household life. No, that would have been sinful then, because they didn't take up the family business. They went off to compete with the family business some other kind of way. But yet Brahma was trying to engage them. So they could get away with that because they remained strictly celibate and engaged in Krishna consciousness. To the extent that they went to the bottom of the universe, where I would assume Lord Brahma, he appeared from that Garbhodakshi Vishnu. Garbhodakshi Vishnu was his mother and father. So he appeared from Garbhodakshi Vishnu. And here, these four sages, they go to the bottom of the universe, and they hear the Bhagavatam from Lord Sankarshan himself. That's spiritual potency. Or like Narada Muni, he's another son of Brahma. But, he also did not engage in filling up the universe with progeny. Instead he travels throughout, assisting the Lord's pastimes and also teaching all the Kshatriyas, and as well as, Brahmanas and people in general about Krishna consciousness, as well as becoming involved in the Lord's Leela, like he did when Kamsa, let Vasudeva and Devaki go. After Shakti, manifested as the eighth child. And when he attempted to kill her, she appeared as Durga and chastised him and then left. So, he relented and apologized and he freed them from the prison. But Narada appeared and told him, hey, he's already appeared somewhere. Is the son of Vasudeva, whom the prophecy has predicted will slay you. Kamsa, what are you going to do about this now? Then he disappears and all of his ministers come and they tell him basically the same thing. You got to do something. You better search that guy out. How are we going to find him? Well, just kill all the babies born during this period. That way we're destined to get him. And he does this crime. He's like one of the original people who perform genocide. Get rid of a certain population, all their political enemies. So he did that. And then when he finally found out that Krishna was still living, then he began to send all those different demons to kill him, beginning with Putana. So the first demon Krishna kills is in the form of a woman. A witch, though, who had killed many children. So,
didn't Brahma get really mad and then some
he became mad and then Shiva appeared. Yeah.
Not the different time form of Shiva, not the. We have the Rudras.
Yeah. Somehow they're connected.
Yeah,
somehow
yeah. But and then it just came out of his forehead or something.
Yeah. But then he also, his procreation created demons, so he was asked to go into meditation.
On top of your head.
And, eventually he created up those different sages and created celestial wives for them, and they filled up the universe. Prajapatis like Daksha, and there's Kashyapa, who
Shiva
from
created
Aditi.
Daksha?
Huh?
Shiva created Daksha?
No, not Shiva created demons. I don't know. Before he created, his divine sons Ganesh and Kartikeya to assist the devas and protect the universe. But originally there were some demons. I think one Kaitava or something like that maybe chased Brahma and tried to kill him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was reading that yesterday. It's just someone was telling the story.
Oh, yeah.
I had to look that up. Madhu,
And it's
Madhu,
also
Sudan,
Madhu,
Yeah, Madhu and Kaito.
Kaito.
Mhm.
And that's why Arjuna refers to Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita as Madhusan.
But from Kashyapa and Aditi, came the Devas, and from Kashyapa and Diti came the demons. So they're cousins, actually they're stepbrothers, same father, different mothers. But because Diti's children were born in an inauspicious time in the evening when Lord Shiva is traveling in a certain way, the great gods of Lord Vishnu's temple who were to engage in duels with him, they took their birth as the most powerful demons, much more powerful than the Devas themselves, and went on a quest to conquer the universe. But, the Devas had the support of Lord Vishnu because they're trying to manage according to his rule. Whereas the Asuras aren't so much interested in Vishnu's rule, they want to manage the universe according to their lust and anger and greed. So, anyway, we know, Vishnu appears and saves the universe from the hands of the demons. So, the point here is that even the Kumaras are hearing the Bhagavatam. They hear the Bhagavatam. All of the great devotees hear the Bhagavatam. And, they're in the Bhagavatam. Just as, in Lord Chaitanya's Leela, all the great devotees are in the Chaitanya Bhagavata, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the Chaitanya Mangala. So similarly, like when Prabhupada's disciples are writing, Prabhupada's pastimes, then naturally, his disciples and their disciples are also there. It may be not the Chaitanya Leela or the or the Bhagavatam, but it's Prabhupada Leela, or it's Lord Chaitanya's Leela of his prediction manifesting, where he creates the Satya Yuga, because the devotees are living Krishna consciousness, and they're hearing and chanting the Bhagavatam and the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and they're teaching it around the world, and the world is becoming Krishna conscious. So all that becomes Leela, and becomes the, also recited and espoused by the great devotees. So this is true happiness. This is where we have defined happiness. This is eternal happiness. It doesn't go away. It can conquer all depression and anxiety. In fact, that's the name of the place that it leads to. Vaikuntha means no place of no anxiety. That means no depression, because anxiety, when it becomes true, it just leads to depression. Like if our anxiety is that we're going to be attacked, or we're going to be locked up, or we're going to have something fatal happen, then if it happens, if one is locked up, in prisons, it's a fact that people who have to spend time in solitary confinement, so much time, they go practically crazy, if not completely crazy. It's very difficult, except for some self-realized persons, to just sit there in darkness, or with a light bulb constantly on, with no windows, no association. Maybe you get some rodents running around or something, some insects, but other than that, the day after day after day after day after year, people, it's not normal. It's a form of torture, not of reformation. So anyhow, it can lead to all sorts of mental health issues. So how is it possible to get free from the diseases of this world? It's only in Krishna consciousness. Doesn't mean that the devotees aren't going to leave their bodies. It doesn't mean that the devotees aren't going to have to tolerate some mental disturbances. Doesn't mean that. It means that by our Krishna consciousness, we leave the body in Krishna consciousness. That our consciousness is Krishna conscious, even though the body may be becoming dismantled at the end of life. Because at the end of life, nothing works. You can read song after song, oh, let me leave before I get too old because I'll be just coughing and mucus will be coming up and I won't be able to chant your name. You know, King Kula Shikara sings like that. So, you know, the body is ultimately going to fade out, just like, you know, you can keep a car, but, you know, what do? You keep replacing parts, you know, it just gets old and worn out. And similarly, so does the human body. You know, we can't keep it alive forever. So people who are on Krishna conscious, it can become quite depressing that the body, you know, you can't keep it from falling apart. But in Krishna consciousness, you know, these are things that are expected. You know, we're practicing to learn to be able to tolerate these sort of things and to be able to fix our mind on Krishna. Like Krishna teaches Arjuna in the beginning of the Gita, you know, you have to learn to tolerate. You know, become free from disturbances, become free from these material modes of nature, rise above them, O Arjuna. So we do our duty, but at the end of life, what is the duty? We just have to remember Krishna. You know, nowadays they talk about old people who can't remember anything. Well, in reality, we don't have to remember anything other than Krishna. You know, we don't have to worry about, you know, what's in this bank account or what so-and-so should be doing over there concerning the economic development of the family or community, state or nation or world. We don't have to worry about all that stuff. We don't have to worry about everybody's sense gratification. You know, are they getting enough food? Do they have proper shelter? Oh, you know, they need more time off. You know, they need a little bit more education on this or that. We don't have to worry about all those things. Those things passed on to the next generation. That's their, you know, that's their duty. Our duty is just to remember Krishna. You know, so therefore in our Vedic culture there is a retirement from, you know, all these varnas. And, you know, and the ashram becomes one that allows one to simply take the time to remember Krishna. That's such, you know, a nice way of life. And that's the joy. We have to find the joy in Krishna consciousness. Initially, coming out of conditional life, it may be very hard because our joy is found in sense gratification. So then to give up sense gratification, which is pleasure in the mode of passion and ignorance, that, you know, can be highly addictive for any soul because the soul is very small. Krishna can't come under the influence of these things, but we can come under the influence of that material energy. So, therefore, you know, initially, Krishna substitutes the mode of goodness. You give this up and take this joy. It may seem like poison at first because, you know, you're not used to it. I mean, who wants to eat vegetarian food when you've been eating all sorts of Italian and French, you know, cuisine made of, you know, untouchable things, you know, doctored up and spiced up and like that. You know, who wants to? They don't want to. You know, you know, fake meat doesn't taste like the real thing, is what they say. So, you know, they don't want to. So it may seem displeasurable at first, but when one understands that my joy, my happiness in life, my eternal life depends on Krishna consciousness, not on material enjoyment. That, you know, material enjoyment is temporary, it won't last forever, but Krishna consciousness is eternal. So I have to learn to find my joy in Krishna consciousness. So then one, you know, puts that aside and may start off as an austerity at first, where there's some pain. You know, this is what we eat. You know? So one may learn to eat dal and rice. Or one may become greedy just for halava because he has to do something because to get a sugar high because he can't drink beer no more. So, you know, they're just doing that, or they can't smoke pot no more. So they're just stoning out on all kinds of pasada. You know, so, but, you know, initially there's some substitution. And then eventually the devotee become steady in Krishna consciousness. They find their joy in Krishna consciousness. And then the Krishna consciousness begins to work its way up, to bhava and ultimately prema, where one, is really experiencing the joy of life. That's Vaikuntha. So to the extent that even at the end of life, like Srila Prabhupada, when the body doesn't work, where it hurts even to turn over, there's all kinds of pains in the legs, you're always getting cramped. If it's not one thing, it's the next. You got that thing where you're always hearing ringing in your ear, and whatever, it keeps you up at night, you can't sleep. Then you can't even eat because, you can't digest anything anymore. And it's even hard to go to the bathroom. I remember Advija Hari, he left in 3 days when he couldn't get up and go to the bathroom on his own. It was just too humiliating, for him. And so he just left shortly after. And when he didn't have the freedom to go to the bathroom on his own. It was just too much for him. And he left the world. And Mahashringa did that recently in India. It was just when it became too difficult to live in the world, he decided, that's it, I'm leaving. And he just took the opportunity with coronavirus, that's what he had, but he didn't no longer try to get better. He just stopped eating and left the world. Because it became too painful living in it.
Like a yogi.
Yeah, that's what yoga's meant for. To be able to leave the world in Krishna consciousness and not keep trying to stay in the world.
Yeah.
Oh, let me repair it this way. Let me repair it that way. Oh, it's just such a painful place, ultimately. You may have to do it while you're young.
Prabhupada did the very same thing at the end.
Yeah.
Don't cook for me anymore. And then
He said, look, I'm finally giving up eating, and there's no question of sex life. Just give up eating and just take a little Charnamrita.
it's meant, but then if you can't relieve the bodily fluid, then within, say, after 12 hours or 14 hours, the body will shut down, die, be poisoned. And there's a way to do that by putting a catheter. And Prabhupada instructed them, don't insert anything in my body.
That or the other thing is if the kidneys aren't working, then they put you on that machine.
Dialysis.
Yeah, and Jayapatni refused that. She didn't want to do that anymore. And even the doctor agreed. It's just prolonging things. It's just like Ramakeli when he left the world from here. The liver was just giving completely out. And he had Sikhi Mahiti rush him to the hospital again. And when he got there, the doctor just looked at him and said, you got to stop this. There's just nothing else we can do. You have to prepare for the ultimate.
The doctor said that?
The doctor told him that.
You can suffer one way or the other.
Super
And
soul.
Yeah, so he came back and Sikhi Mahiti fixed Prabhupada up there on a computer screen. He just stayed in bed looking at Prabhupada. And when he was gone, right before he was gone, he was crying out to Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Bhaktivinoda, Bhaktivinoda. So, who knows? We know what he was singing, but that's what he was saying. Bhaktivinoda, Bhaktivinoda. So,
Jai Singh did the same thing.
Krishna consciousness, ever joyful. Our pleasure in Krishna consciousness is ever joyful. Their pleasure comes to an end. Just like I remember devotees used to preach about in our generation, there was that famous movie star guy, Johnny Wasmiller, who was an Olympic swimmer, and he became Tarzan in the movies. So Tarzan, he was, very muscular and athletic. But then when Johnny Wasmiller got old, life became so difficult because he lost all of his physique and all of his energy and couldn't, and all he knew how was to take pleasure in what young people do. And he became, depressed and unhappy. But devotees, understand the actual birds and bees of life and, prepare ourselves and do our best to serve Krishna while living, just like we have that saying Bhaktivinoda Thakur gave us that, devotee is, while living, is spreading the holy name around, and the same thing when he's gone. And he's spreading the holy name around. So in the same way, we're serving Krishna while living, as young people, middle-aged people, older people, that eventually eventually, even when we go, we're just going to serve Krishna. I mean, you know, and it's pretty neat because it's like a venture in the sense that you're in the military and you know, in a specially assigned, special unit where they can assign you to wherever they need you, whether you know the leaders need you to go to help to save the world. They assign you, and don't they write all these fictional things where the fictional superheroes are being assigned to go somewhere to save the world? So in the same way, the devotees, we're leaving, but you know, where's our assignment going to be? You know, are we going here with Prabhupada, or are we going there with Lord Chaitanya, or are we going here with Krishna? Who knows? It's all in the hands of the Lord's Leela.
Prabhupada has said that to some of his disciples on a few occasions. One he said something about the Bhakti Siddhanta Prabhupada. And then he said, but now we're all here together again. Our Guru, Bhakti Siddhanta Prabhupada. And then another time he said, Bhakti Siddhanta Prabhupada sent you all to help you.
He also said about this time in the spiritual world.
Yeah. Everyone will be there. Shamsundar will be there, I will be there, everyone but Mr. Mayor. He's the man who's trying to cheat Prabhupada and June. But he probably said he prayed the Lord Vishnu. And his wife came in.
Oh golly, it's already 8:30. It's late. They passed out temple site plan yesterday.
Oh,
Actually, you know, they were real happy with it. I mean, ever people. I mean, they were questioning this and questioning that. They were looking at things, you know, and the lawyer was there, and you know, got to us, and they said, "Wow, looks like plenty of room between the road and the building, new temple, huh?" And so, it was like only like in 5 minutes, just some kind of sweet exchange. You
That's
know?
what I was concerned about, is the distance between the road and the town.
Yeah, it has to be at least 100 feet off the road.
Yeah.
We're like 250 to 300 feet off the road.
Where did you go, Bay St. Louis or Gulfport?
No, Bay St. Louis, it's
And
Hancock
those guys
County.
know you in and out. When I go,
Yeah, they liked it. It's on one of the highest points in
Oh,
Hancock
yeah.
County, you know.
when I go, they know me about the restaurant and that, and then they'll tell me about you.
Yeah, that man who's supposed to be coming here to clean the kitchen hood and stove, he also asked about good karma. Said you're not answering his calls.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
I was wondering, it says the Kumaras, it says they want to know truth regarding Vasudeva, and then it says when Lord Sankarshan, he's opening his eyes because he was meditating upon his Supreme Lord Vasudeva. Is that referring to Garbhodakshaya Vishnu? Because I get them all wrong.
Yeah.
I think this Lord Sankarshan may be Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, or maybe he's an Antasage, but you know, they expand from Balaram, who expands from Krishna, so you know, Vasudeva is the son of Vasudeva, and that's Krishna. Or there's also expansions of forms of Vasudeva.
Because I was wondering, what happens in Narayan? Is he also uses Vasudeva? I mean, because usually I think of Anantashesh with Narayan, which means he's lying in the water. Is that just because the name means land?
Well, all Vishnus have an Antasage with them. You know, that's their bid, you know.
Actually, no, it's Karna Vishnu is just literally lying on the ocean, the Karna ocean. And Karna means cause, the causal ocean. So the water is going through his pores, and that is cause. And then from those drops of water of the causal ocean come out the universe.
Yeah. That's how it's depicted. But then, if you read the pastime where Krishna and Arjuna ride through with the Sudarshan chakra leading the way, they ride through all the coverings of the universe.
They go to
Vishnu.
Garbhodakshaya Vishnu.
No, they lead the coverings of the universe. Garbhodakshaya Vishnu is within the universe. So they lead the whole universe. They go out of the coverings of the universe to see Mahavishnu. Because it's Mahavishnu who has been stealing Brahmin's children. So there, I had to read it too. I don't know if I'll do the research though, but you can do the research. If I'm not mistaken, it says that they see Mahavishnu lying upon Seshanaga.
Yeah, they might say that. But
So I mean, it's a pastime. He can lie on Seshanaga when he wants to, and he can lie somewhere else if he wants to.
But Govardhan said Vishnu is actually, one sense says it's at the bottom of the universe. Another place it says he's with Rupa and Dhruva.
Right, I wonder about that.
And then here's the other thing. There's 4 sampradayas. The Shri, which is Lakshmi, Rudra, Shiva, Kumara, and Brahma. Now, so here's Sankarshan speaking to Sanat Kumar. Then Sanat Kumar speaks to, it's in the next purport, I think. His name is something like Sankhya Yala. Yeah, and then he speaks to Parasara, and Parasara is the father of Vyasadeva, and it's also, if Parasara and Brihaspati both approach this, what is that?
That's the stupid battery down here.
He speaks to this other individual. What's his name again?
Yes, you
Yeah, and he's going to learn from Sanat Kumar. So that's the beginning of it. Seems to be a beginning of the Kumar specific succession. He speaks to Parasara and Brihaspati. Parasara speaks to Maitreya. Parasara is also the son of Vyasadeva. Vyasadeva is a disciple of Narada Muni from Brahma.
Mm-hmm.
So there's an intertwining of the disciplic successions.
Huh?
Right.
Interesting.
So did you only go up to text 4?
I did 3 and 4, so it's text 5 tomorrow. Oh, next time we
One
do
more
it.
thing that was one. So in the very beginning, when the Lord shook hands with Brahma, that was the original Chatur Shloki, is the original Bhagavatam.
Yeah.
And here now it's being repeated by these individuals in different ways.
Yeah, it keeps expanding from
It's
there.
expanding, right? Okay. So the history is all.
And that's in the second chapter.
Yeah. History's
I
being
don't
repeated.
know the number.
Why we should take shelter on the bottom. Thank you.
Yeah, I heard semi-interesting. There's a thing out of New York, and it's called what is it? The Sages, Wisdom of the Sages. I saw Radhanath on it at the beginning of campaign. There's 2 devotees, Ranganath, and I can't remember the other person's name. And it's out of the Bhakti Center. Ranganath, and then the other one is Uber or something like that. Anyway, so Vidayananda was on recently, and they were asking about the Srimad Bhagavatam. Vidayananda tends to go off on all kinds of tangential things, but his description of the Srimad Bhagavatam and the appreciation of it from other great Sanskrit, so-called great Sanskrit scholars, even out in this time and in the 18th century and the 19th century, there's no question it's the greatest literature ever compiled, and in all sense, and with the greatest form of language, the Sanskrit language. And it was sort of interesting, but it was hard because they don't like the word preach. They want you have to say, I'm sharing. The politically correct new curve is you don't preach. And then I thought, well, reach isn't preach. So how about I'm reaching out to you? That's a sharing, isn't it? But anyway, there were some really interesting facts in what Vidayananda was saying about the Bhagavatam, but it also got into other things. And then one of them asked, well, why is it we haven't heard of Srimad Bhagavatam like we've heard of the Iliad and the Odyssey or Canterbury Tales? Why have we? And he gave some answer. Vidayananda gave an answer that didn't really satisfy me because I was thinking it's because Prabhupada brought it to us. The Brahmins in India wouldn't let it come out because Prabhupada made the sacrifice. He brought it. Vidayananda was saying it was well because we're in the West. Yeah, that's right. And who brought it to the West? Prabhupada.
I heard a story that it's the Bhagavatam itself got Prabhupada to take the Bhagavatam over. It was like some kind of pastime where the Bhagavatam wants to come.
Yeah, that's right. That's what it is. And he brought those first 3 volumes. Volume 1, Volume 2, Volume 3 that he had translated. And he had, I don't know, like 50 sets in. I used to have one. It was actually on the book. It was written Keith Ham. You know who that is?
So it was given to him initially?
Yeah, Keith Ham.
How did you acquire it?
He had left it at the Atlanta Temple as a gift to Balamanta. It was there. Then one of Keith Ham's disciples, he was a little eccentric devotee, he stole it and brought it back to Mr. Ham, or in other words, quote unquote, Kirtananda.
But you actually had it for some time?
Yeah, I had it for a long time.
And
I told Kirtananda
he stole it from you?
Yeah, Vishnu Murthy did.
That was Vishnu Murthy.
You know him? Yeah, he's funny. But then one day, I caught him, Prabhupada's bedroom, where Prabhupada actually slept when he was in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
I bought it, I got it all set up, and Prabhupada slept there. And one day, I caught Vishnu Murthy sleeping in it.
Sleeping in Prabhupada's bed?
What are you doing? Sleeping in Prabhupada's bed? He said, I feel closer to him. I said, oh, you can't just sleep on the founder Charles' bed. Anyway, he stole, and Kirtananda had given permission. He said it was okay that we kept the book there. And then he took it and brought it to Vrindavan.
Oh, Krishna, that's a shame you lost that.
Yeah, because I like the language, the broken English. I love it. It's really interesting.
You can get it from the BBT, just remade,
Yeah,
but it's not like having the one.
Who knows where it is now? In fact, in those days, on the cups of the 69 was first, and then the 70s, early 70s, 71, there was a bunch of those books kind of floating around. There used to be those chapters too. Instead of doing the whole
Yeah, we put out the
chapters, yeah, that was really. I had a
That
bunch
was
of those.
nice, yeah.
And is this turned on?
I hope so.
I don't think it is.
Oh, God. I just kind of got up and left.
Let's see. Could you walk in front of it and I can see whether it's... No, it's still on.